Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Black News Hour. I'm your host, Tallis Piaget, and this is the first many shows to come for a new network we're launching called YNN, and that is your news network. There are numerous other news networks out there, but none that really cater to the Black American. Now, because all of these other news networks are meant to simply entertain with salacious information, hyped up controversy, and honestly just outright lies. And their goal is simply to produce fear and hate in their viewers. No, that is not what we do here at YNN, at Your News Network. No, our goal here is to simply educate and to present you news that's pertinent and informing to the Black American society. With that being said, some of the information we provide will be good. Unfortunately, some of the information we provide will be bad, actually quite bad. But again, the bad news is not there for entertainment, nor is it there to infuriate you or produce fear. It's simply there to educate you. One thing that will separate us from every other typical news program is how we start our program. We refuse to start with negative news. No, we're going to start with the good news. And we will commence with a segment I call Positively Black Positivity. Let me introduce you to Jalen Bledsoe. This young man right here built an IT company at the age of 13. Well, now 2 years later, he is 15 and he is worth over $3.5 million. And don't get it twisted, this young man attends Hazelwood Central High School, which lets everyone know that he has a typical middle class existence. So he didn't get millions of dollars from his parents for some startup money. No, this was his brainchild and his hard work. And this is a true example of starting from the bottom, now we here. And what does this young man do? He provides IT consultation and a myriad of other techno-geekologicals for companies that request them. Techno-geekologicals? Hey man, who the hell wrote this? He now has over 100 people working for him. Do you hear that? He has 100 people working for him at the age of 15. This young man will never have to work for anyone for his entire life. And this is a young black man from St. Louis, Missouri. Right now, he is currently working with hotels because check this out. This young brother has created an app that lets you check into a hotel using your phone. And once you've checked in, you can go to the hotel and use your phone as a key pass to get inside your room. And then you can use your phone to get inside a room. Did you hear that? Nigga, what? You know what I'm saying? This story should do far more than inspire you. It should also remind you of the wondrous feats that our youth can accomplish. So Jalen Bledsoe, this attaboy is for you. So now that story was so good, it's done got my cockles all feeling all wonderful and lovely. Got me feeling all good and jiggly, juicy, all that good stuff. So I'm gonna give you one more good news story. So this brother right here is Burton Nahum. He's from Senegal. He is considered the fourth most innovative man in the world. And why is this? Because he created an apparatus called ROSA. And what is ROSA? ROSA is an instrument that basically helps neurosurgeons perform brain surgery. Do you understand that? This black man built an instrument that helps neurosurgeons perform brain surgery. So this is how I imagine it. The brain surgeon comes in, puts you to sleep, lets you know he's going to remove a tumor from your frontal lobe or something like that. He puts you to sleep. He goes to the computer, he types in remove frontal lobe, and he goes off and plays his 18 courses of golf. And now this instrument performs the brain surgery. After he's done, he comes back and the instrument is like, tumor removed, go get your $1 million check. This invention is this brother's creation from start to finish. How amazing is that? So he is the world leading roboticist. But like I said, he's number 4 on this list of innovative people. So who are the 3 people above him? Number one is Steve Jobs. And I understand that this man truly, if it wasn't for him, we couldn't use computers right now. He made these computers, home ready, and that's a wonderful thing. I'm not going to debate that one. But number two is Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook. First and foremost, he stole that idea, so that's not really innovative. And second off, is it really a wonderful thing to communicate with people you haven't talked to in years? Do we really want to see old friends? I think not. Finally, we have James Cameron, the director of Avatar. He's number three. And this because he created a new filming technique. Now, those results are just indicative of how America prioritizes what's important. See, creating something that entertains and distracts people, oh my God, now that is so innovative. My phone can flash 19 different colors. I can read about other people's lives. This movie is awesome. But this brother creates an instrument that actually performs brain surgery, and he's fourth on the list. Man, get that shit. Excuse us while we take a quick break. Come over here. Sit. Good boy. Lay down. Good boy. Roll over. Good boy. Good boy. Up, up. Good boy. Good boy. That is a good boy. Sit. Sit. All right. Good boy. Good boy. Speak. Good boy. Good boy. That's a good boy. Okay, so my next segment is entitled Getting Some Years. So these are stupid criminal stories where the perpetrators are now spending numerous years behind bars. First up, let me introduce you to John Coleman. Now he's from Northside St. Louis, and this unlucky robber visits the First National Bank downtown to withdraw some money. The only problem is, it's not his money he's withdrawing. He approaches the teller with a note that says, "You got 2 seconds before I start shooting." So the teller complies, gives him a bag of money, and he gets away scot-free. There are cameras, but none of them get a great view of the robber's face. Well, in an attempt to find out how much information they had on the robbery, John Coleman calls the police as a fake informant to tell on the guy that's robbing, just so he can figure out how much information the police have. But this is the issue. As he starts talking to the police, he's divulging information no one else knows. So this guy is like, oh, the guy wrote a note on a yellow, loose leaf paper that my mom gave me when I was 12. He had on some green socks with blue shoes, maybe an old stanky polo shirt, So the policeman is like, that sounds really familiar. So he goes back and look at the camera event or the scene and realizes it's John Coleman. So they throw this guy in a lineup. Not only does the teller know who he is or picks him up, numerous other witnesses pick him up. Having priors, they threw the book at this 52-year-old man, and he will spend 30 years behind bars. Next is Jason White. Now, he was partying at the Peekaboo Lounge in Brooklyn, Illinois, which is simply East St. Louis. If you live in St. Louis, everything east of Mississippi is East St. Louis until you get to Chicago for us. This dude gets into a fight at the Peekaboo Lounge, which sounds highly exciting. The Peekaboo Lounge, I might have to venture there one day. Wink, wink. Well, he gets into a fight at this lounge, and apparently he loses. Well, his feelings get hurt because you know how these young boys are being raised by their mothers. They don't know how to deal with emotions, so his feelings hurt and he has to lash out. What does he do? He goes home, he grabs his .40 caliber pistol, and then he shoots the guy in the stomach. The bullet passes by the guy's gut and hits the girl in the leg. Jason White then proceeds to leave. Both victims live. This young man gets 30 years. Then there is Andrew McAfee. And this nigga here crazy. This nigga ill crazy. Who wrote? They actually wrote this nigga ill crazy. Man, what my writers doing? Get this well, he is crazy. But anyway, while chilling in an apartment one night, this dude gets into an argument with his friend. Numerous people have seen these guys together, so they're assumed to be very, very good friends. The young compatriots began to debate, as friends do, and at one point the discussion gets so heated that Andre lost all cool. He grabbed a skillet from the stovetop and proceeded to bash his friend's head relentlessly until brains literally oozed out of his skull. No one knows what the argument was over. Not even Andre will divulge what the topic was about. I'm sure he knows no matter what it was, it did not deserve the death of his friend. But this knucklehead is from the hood, so let me assume there's only 3 things that could cause such outrage in the hood, and that's either money, drugs, or a woman. Or a crap game. I forgot, maybe there's 4. A crap game. Because all the crap games I've seen in the hood, I've never seen one end peacefully, so it may have been craps. That young brother got 30 years. So, what am I saying here, people? That is 3 brothers with over 90 years of jail time between them. Please consider what that means and understand that this scenario of exorbitant jail sentences is a serious issue plaguing Black America. Where are all of our men? Where are our soldiers? Where are our warriors? Well, a nice portion is living out their glory years in the American penal system with no hope of rehabilitation and no hope of ever getting out. See, a cage is no place for any living being, even an animal. So for a man to eke out his existence living in an 8x10 cell is horrendous. It's nothing to be proud of, and it's nothing to look forward to. People, talk to your boys. We'll be right back. I wanted to speak on something that is pretty old right now, but I haven't heard it said, so I will speak on it now. It has to deal with the Trayvon debacle. And no worries, I'm not going to rehash all of that old bull crap nor any of those old arguments. This is something a little different. I'm actually going elsewhere. I'm speaking to all of the entertainers that's boycotting Florida. I have to say, really? Really? And there's a long list. And if you want to know who the entertainers are, you can find the list. It's not hard to find. I have to ask, WTF is wrong with all of you? Really? So a white, Hispanic, Mexican-looking dude, I don't know what the hell he is. We call him white, but he looks Hispanic. I bet if he was under the sun for a couple of days and you put a sombrero on him, he couldn't get back into America if you left him in Mexico. And so now none of you all will play in Florida. I find that very interesting because, let's take a look at some of the boycotters and where they're from, okay? Number one, let's look at Young Jeezy. He was born in South Carolina, but, was raised in Atlanta. He went there about when he was a toddler. So we're just going to say he's from Atlanta. Well, Young Jeezy, you all had approximately 550 murders in your home state. And according to the numbers, we can assume that approximately 80% were black men. Okay? So if we use the calculations, as of recently, approximately 440 black males are murdered in Georgia every year. But you're not boycotting them? Does that not ruffle your feathers, Young Jeezy? Or is it because it's the black boys killing other black boys? I'm just curious. Let's go to Kanye West. He's another one that's boycotting Florida because Trayvon was shot. And where is he from? He's from Chi-Town, Chicago. I don't think anyone from Chicago has the right to boycott any murders. If an outsider visited the poor black regions, they would think they were visiting some third world country. It's a shame. And no matter how bad it is in Chicago, it continues to get worse. Do you ever visit your old neighborhood, Kanye-diss? I'm sure you don't. Your city alone will have 500 murders, if not more. And the entire state of Illinois will have 721 murders. Again, we know the bulk of them are black boys. So Kanye, I have to ask, why are you not boycotting Chicago? Why aren't you setting up some kind of event and letting people know you will never perform in Chicago again until these numbers begin to decrease? Is it because black boys are killing black boys? I'm just curious. Is that the reason? Now, just one last person, because I do find this very interesting. So one last person who's boycotting Florida, another entertainer. This is Jay-Z. Now, Jay-Z is from Brooklyn, New York. I think you trip over murdered people in New York, on a regular basis. So do I even have to say what goes on there? Let's bypass all the bull crap and jump straight to the numbers. In New York, 774 people were murdered. 774. Again, the bulk of them being black men. It's insane, isn't it? And the list continues. I guarantee you if I went down this list of other people who's refusing to play in Florida and I look at their home state, we can find numerous murders in their home state. So I say, Jay-Z, why are you playing in New York and not Florida when in New York at least 2 people are murdered every day on average? Again, mostly black men. Bottom line, as a whole, this country has over 15,000 to 16,000 homicides every year, with 10,000 to 11,000 being black young men. To put that in perspective, Japan, another developed country like America, has approximately 1,000 murders per year. That's an entire country with over 130 million people. Now, we are a black society with approximately 33 million people, and 11 to 12,000 of our boys are being murdered every year. I think that is truly something to think about. I think it's something truly to consider. So I understand the outcry for Trayvon, but don't every last one of those 11, 12,000 young black men deserve that same type of outrage? Shouldn't we want to boycott? Shouldn't we want to boycott every single state where our young men are dying by the thousands? So just go to Florida and play your damn music and be serious. Or stop playing in all of these places that's bogged down with homicidal gun-toting maniacs. We'll be right back. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Black News Hour. I'm your host Tallis Piaget, and this is our panel. Today I would like to welcome Dr. Terrell Campbell. He's a PhD historian, and we also have with us former journalist and director of the Sweet Potato Project, Brother Sylvester Brown.
How you doing?
How you gentlemen doing today?
Doing good, good and good.
Awesome. Welcome to this first panel that we're having for the Black News Hour. And let's start off with something, I guess not too controversial, but somewhat interesting. I would love to know your two opinion of this. So recently I read an article regarding all of the schools in, St. Louis that's being unaccredited, as well as more recently we've had two schools in North County that has been unaccredited. With that, we've had a plethora of students leaving our schools, and this caused a bunch of hardships. But I've also read one article that was truly interesting to me, and it regarded the hemorrhaging of teachers from our school systems. They said within the last 2 months, we've lost 50 teachers, and half of them left after the first day of school.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So I know you guys are unprepared for any of these questions, but I first have to ask, what do you think about that? Why do you think this is? Why do you think we're having teachers leaving our schools like this?
I'll start off and I'm sure you'll jump in. Tallis, this is a systemic problem, which I think goes all the way back to the early 70s, late 60s. We always had this idea that if African American children are sent to white schools and white suburbs, they will learn better. It's not until recently that we found out that was a mistake, and now we're coming back to these underfunded, overwhelmed schools. So you have to ask, who are these teachers? Where are they coming from? Are they from the community? Have they been trained to understand the community? Have they been trained to really understand this urban environment from which they're supposed to navigate? So what you're finding is they can't handle it. They've not been trained for this. Number one, they come into these schools and they're confronted with the issues that our youth deal with and have been dealing with for decades. Not only our youth, but their parents and their grandparents. So they're not prepared for that. They've not been taught, to deal with that. Then you add on the institutional restrictions. Teach to the test. What's the curriculum? Does this curriculum really reach and inspire these children? Does it really tap into their inherent genius, if you will?
Right.
So then you come to find out that these schools are losing their accreditation, and then you have this great not influx, but the opposite effect: kids being pushed out of the school system. So these teachers they don't even get a chance to even know who these students are. And keep in mind that St. Louis is still going through this great experiment that was started way back in 2005, where they tried to rebuild all the schools. They brought in this private consultant, $5 million per year, who knew nothing about education. The guy who they brought in was the guy who made his name selling shoes. But yet this was a guy who was put in charge of reforming the whole education system. He reformed education from a strictly financial, budgetary perspective. Nothing to do with the kids, nothing to do with the buses they took to school.
Running like a business.
It was ran like a business.
Mhm.
So you're still dealing with that mess. So our schools lost accreditation, still losing accreditation. Our kids are being shipped all over the county in the suburbs and stuff like that. And what we don't realize, now I'll let you hop in on it in a minute, what we don't realize, every time we kill a school, we wound the community. When you and I were coming up, the teachers that I knew lived in the neighborhood. So did the boiler makers, so did the people in the kitchen, so did everybody. They were part of the community. So when you kill a school, when you bus your kids out to a different community, when you bring in major corporations to fix their food, you are wounding your community. So I'm saying all these things, all these factors are leading to these teachers who, number one, you got to ask, what is the racial demographic of these teachers? Then you got to ask, what is the gender of these teachers? They're not prepared for what they get into, so they exit quickly.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it, like Sylvester said, is systemic. A lot of it has to do with the level of experience with these teachers that are coming in. A lot of these teachers are new teachers, and they've just become disillusioned with what they thought they were getting into compared to what they actually encounter. I mean, I know teachers who have degrees in one field who never get to teach in that field.
Interesting.
You know, it's not like, because some of these schools are being run in such a business top-down fashion, they're filling bodies, they're filling classrooms, and the mix between the teacher and the classroom is not always perfect, and it doesn't match one another. And there are other opportunities for the types of teachers that they are trying to recruit. There are other opportunities, better opportunities, with clear definitions of what's expected and so on and so forth out here in the St. Louis area. I mean, just from the pay scale, let's just talk about the pay scale. Just from a pay scale discrepancy between some public schools and some private schools, it's totally different when you add in benefits and so on and so forth. So when you add that in the mix.
If I can interrupt, like how disparaging is the difference? Could you give me some numbers?
Well, I know that when I came in as a first-year teacher, fresh out of undergraduate study, I won't mention the school that I taught at, but I taught at a private institution out at West County. And I was making a salary commensurate with someone who was teaching in the public schools for 5 years. You know,
Whoa.
and they, I understand, are on some type of tenure system. So not only has this person been working for 5 years and making less than I make as a first year, no experience having teacher coming from an undergraduate program, they're 5 years into whatever tenure system they're in. So can you imagine being in a tenure system for 5 years, trying to get tenure was supposed to be your holy grail, only to learn that you make less than someone who is a first-year inexperienced teacher at a private institution. So, I mean, there's just so many areas and so many reasons why a teacher could become disillusioned with the St. Louis public school system and leave. Out of those 50 teachers, one could have left just because of the horrible conditions of his classroom. You know, another could have left for many other reasons that Sylvester mentioned here. You know, and another could have left just because of how they feel teachers are being treated by the St. Louis public school system. When these schools shut down, or when they become, when they lose their accreditation and their students go away, they lose teachers as well. And so new teachers see the facility with which the administrators get rid of teachers who have been there for some time. And they're like, well, if they can do that to them, what are they going to do to me, and what does my future hold? You know, so it's just, you know, it's a combination of a reorganization of the school going on. It's a combination of some schools losing their accreditation. It's a combination of the types of teachers they're trying to recruit compared to the types of teachers they already have in place there. I mean, there are a multitude of issues that are overlapping at any one time. So I don't know if we would be able to put our finger on one specific reason why these teachers are leaving, but it's just a repercussion of years and years and years and years of neglect to the St. Louis public school system as a whole.
Interesting. Well, the article I read in particular, she was a white lady, She was teaching kindergarten at a school called Ashland, actually around the corner from where I grew up.
I attended Ashland once
Oh,
upon
there
a
you
time in my life.
So, and her reasoning for leaving she left after 6 days. Okay, she started, and 6 days later she left. Well, she was teaching kindergarten. She said she came from like Ladue and Kirkwood, and one of her reasonings was that she couldn't get the class to sit down, basically, not for more than 5 minutes. And I have to admit, she could have gone elsewhere, but she didn't blame the area or anything like that. She just said she believed those kids didn't start off in preschool. So they came, were more affluent kids. They have preschool, then they go to kindergarten, kind of get acclimated to the school environment. But she was saying these kids didn't have it. This is their first time in school. They didn't understand how to sit down and things like that. So is that, but this is my issue, because I'm like, is that because they didn't go to preschool, or is that because a lack of parenting as well? Well,
I'll try to address both of those. Let's take the preschool element for starters. It is amazing that in this era of sequester, that the preschool element is a problem, because part of what is being killed in our national sequester is funding for preschool. So at least there used to be an avenue for lower economic people to have access to preschool. So it wasn't only the more affluent students who got to go to preschool and were prepared for kindergarten when it came up. So I just want to say that. So when we talk about problems with the St. Louis public school system, you have to understand it's not just a local problem.
Right.
It is a national, global problem, because our national budget is messed up because of some global outlooks that our politicians have done, right? And what they've done is they've cut preschool to help solve that problem. And that is affecting us locally in St. Louis, all the way down to the level of your kindergarten teacher who lasted for 6 days. Now, the other end, these kids not sitting down. I've never taught children that are not in high school or college, so I want to put that out there. But I've taught a number of different types of student bodies. I've taught some who were more energetic than others, and I've taught some who were more self-controlling than others. That is par for the course when you're teaching children.
Indeed.
Children are unruly. That's why they're children. That is why we are there as educators to try to guide and curtail their behavior until they get to a point where they can do that themselves.
But is that fair? I've always felt that it is a teacher's job to teach. There's a difference from teaching and raising a kid.
You're right.
It's a parent's job to raise a kid. And the reason why I bring this up, because I often debate with people, and I hear people put so much onus on the teachers. They're not doing this. They're not doing this. They're not alone in this.
You're 100% right. What I will say to you, I will once again piggyback off of something Sylvester said earlier. The best schools recognize that their schools are not just entities that exist in that place providing a service. The best schools are schools that are part of the communities that they're in. I'll once again reference one of the private schools I taught at out in West County. That school was a hallmark of the community. You understand what I'm saying? Parents' involvement, teacher involvement, parents and teachers know one another. Teachers know not only the children that they teach, but they end up knowing the siblings of the children that they teach. And so, while I do agree with you that it is primarily the parents' responsibility to raise their kids. You parents, you raise your kids. They're your responsibility. But we also have a role. We are a part of this community. We are a part of this city. We are a part of this state. We are a part of this nation. So if I think that I can just go to school and only be concerned about the expertise and the service that I can give to my customers, I guess that would be my students, then I am having a very impersonal relationship with those students. And how can you teach someone if your relationship to them is impersonal? How can you get the best out of them if your relationship to them is impersonal? Children, what is the old saying? From the mouth of babes come the truth. Children know when you are being impersonal and cold to them, and they will respond accordingly because they are human beings.
We got a couple of things. Number one, you have to understand that the parents of these students are also the products of the public school system. They can only bring what they've been taught.
Interesting.
And a lot of times they haven't been taught that much. Secondly, what our public school system has lost is the ability to be innovative. What you had under Bush was the 5 points of light, and then you had the No Child Left Behind. And what's Obama has a new thing right now.
What does Obama have? I don't know. The Dreamers, the Dream Defenders, or something like that.
But you understand, all these they create these systems, and they throw it at the public schools, and they tell the teachers, if your classmates are not, if your students are not reaching this, then you're going to lose, or you're going to be punished for it. The problem is we're forgetting about innovation. If you go to some of these public schools, like my daughters went to New City School, they taught from the child's strength. So if you were artistic, if you were active, if you were good with your hands, if you were good, they took the time to find out what is your strength, and they used your strength as a jump off.
Can I interject just for a second there, Sylvester? It's amazing because our schools in the city, like New City School, and is that the one on Kings Highway at what is the one at Kings Highway by Matthews Dickies?
I'm not just can't talk about Matthews Dickies. I'm not sure.
But the point I wanted to make is that as I've gone around and I've taken a look at who are the founders of these schools, most of the founders of these schools are people who were administrators in these West County private schools or West County schools. So even the success of those schools, like New City School or New City Academy, is not a result necessarily of any St. Louis public school influence or the influence of those type of administrators. They are administrators that are coming elsewhere with a vision of how, native to St. Louis, but elsewhere coming into the city saying, hey, this is what has been successful in our community. How about we try to model something like that? Whereas what they're doing in the St. Louis public school system, I have no idea.
But my point is, these administrators of these private schools, they have the flexibility to experiment. They can study what's going on all over the world, not just in the country, and they can implement it because they've got that flexibility. Whereas our public school system and administrators and teachers, they've got to stick to this criteria that's failed. It's a criteria it's been an experiment, Tallis, for the last 50 years. Let's try this. Let's try this. Let's try this.
I know a teacher who, at Roosevelt, who wanted to just introduce his students to the Khan Academy. You guys aware of the Khan Academy? Being used all over the world to teach all kind of kids, all types of subjects in all areas, from undeveloped Africa to the booming cities in India. And do you know he got reprimanded for trying to introduce that? Just introduce that into the curriculum. So when he talks about flexibility and innovation and learning, there is a real restriction on it in the St. Louis public school system. And what the motivation behind that restriction is, I don't know. I do know. But the restrictions come from trying to teach to the test and so on and so forth. But truthfully, what the restrictions behind, what the motivation behind those restrictions are coming from people who hold doctorates in education is baffling to me. I cannot figure out how someone who holds a PhD in education restricts their innovation, their innovative thinking when it comes to how to educate children.
Well, that kind of leads me to this last point involving the education of our kids. Just speaking frankly, you can call it conspiracy theory, but let's say it is this system's job to keep status quo. A big part of status quo is keeping people impoverished. How do you keep people impoverished? Don't give them education. Make it hard to get an education, even when it's supposed to be free for someone 18 and under prior to college. I personally think this is a part of, that system just performing their status quo role, doing whatever they can to kind of, I hate to use the old cliche, hold us down or whatever, but if I can just put it simply, just trying to keep this, everything level how it's always been, and hopefully how it will always be. Would you gentlemen agree with that? Do you think it's the system, like the system is truly doing their job to keep, the situation as it is?
I think there is enough blame to go around that we don't have to pick any one entity. But in regards to that system that you talk about, they could function in a matter where it seemed as though they cared more. They can function in a matter where it seems as though they were tapped more into the communities that they supposedly serve. They could function in a matter that didn't seem so cold and dry and businesslike. I'll go back again to my analogy between someone who provides a service and someone who gets it. If they stop treating their constituency like customers, that could begin dialogue in a direction that could go a long way. But I do understand the role of education in a society, and I do understand the role of education in either helping to maintain the status quo or change the status quo. And the manner in which we deliver education in the St. Louis public school system is not conducive to changing the status quo of our young men and women in the St. Louis area.
Absolutely.
Now, with that being said, I always, when I look at poverty, I try to look at it two ways. I try to look at it in a relative fashion, and I try to look at it in a comparison fashion throughout the world in general. Our poorest citizens are nowhere near as poor as the world's poor. I say that to say, even as poorly as some of our kids are educated in the St. Louis school system, they present them with the education that could put them on a foundation for a productive life. Perhaps it is not an education taught to the degree and with the intimacy of some of our West County schools, but what I'm saying is the basic curriculum does put one on a foundation for life if it was taught in an innovative manner that was interesting to the children. And so when you ask, does the current setup help to maintain the status quo, I would say by default the answer to that is yes, because it has not changed anything.
Gotcha. You have to be very clear. This country was founded by a bunch of rich guys. It's an oligarchical, it's a system of oligarchy. Rich guys set the Constitution for other rich guys. Didn't include women, didn't include blacks, didn't include poor white guys, didn't include landowners. So this system is still in effect today. We're still training our kids to be a part of that system. When you get out of college, you go here for a job. You get out of college, you go here. You work your way up the ranks. It is a antiquated system that no longer fits in the global economy. So when you look at minorities and poor kids, you're looking at the very lowest level, the most acute indications of the problem. But believe me, it's not just our problem. We are graduating kids from top-notch universities who have no idea what degrees, who are unprepared for a service industry world. These are the jobs that's being created right now in America. It's not technology. Right. It's service industry.
I have a friend that had a degree in architecture, and he's a waiter.
Exactly. So in this big picture, we are following a failed system, and of course racism is involved. Of course white superiority is involved. But it really is a system that's killing this country. You've got these rich guys who decided, I want to get a $30,000 bonus. $30 million bonus every year for the number of jobs I shipped overseas. So with that formula, and as my brother pointed out earlier, it's at the top and then it trickles down. So with that formula of us not being innovative, America is not creating nothing. That's what made us great. The Industrial Revolution, creating all these things that the world needed. Right. That's what made America great. Innovation.
Look at right now. Right now in St. Louis, it's amazing. St. Louis has become one of the major hubs in the nation for technology jobs over the last few years. But the companies are having a difficult time finding an employee base that's educated enough in the technical fields that they need to fill the jobs. Compare that with the lack of innovation in our St. Louis public schools. The fact that our children can probably program your iPhone better than you can, yet we have not thought of any innovative ways to educate these children. So when you see how, to get back to your question, are we maintaining the status quo? If the status quo is to keep unemployment high amongst children that look like you and I, if you're not innovating in your classrooms to teach to what the employees need in a city like St. Louis, where we're begging for people with technological backgrounds to fill these roles, of course you're helping to uphold the status quo.
So we did end our segment our panel segment, but people really wanted to hear Sylvester Brown a little bit more. So I had one question in particular for him. Brother Sylvester, you recently posted an article on your Facebook page regarding black spending power. I thought it was a very interesting article because it said this year black people will be able to spend $1.1 trillion.
Right.
$1.1 trillion. But I don't know if I left a response. And my response is I find that so intriguing that our spending power steadily increases, but our net worth has been stagnant since slavery.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? I mean, like, what is that? What's that correlation? What how can we spend so much money but not have so much money? And what is that?
It goes back to what you were saying about the system that we've been brainwashed to follow along. We are consumer. We are consumer-driven people. All Americans. African Americans, I think, are even a bigger part of that demographic because we're trying to buy our self-esteem. We're trying to buy our worth. We're trying to buy our place into America. That means we buy the homes in the county. We buy the Lexuses and the Benz and the Rolexes and the fancy hats and the fancy tennis shoes because we're trying to buy self-esteem. You see some of the richest people who are some of the most modest dressed, drive the most modest cars because their self-esteem is not tied into material goods. So we've been, and I keep stressing this point to my friends, that we had 400 years of psychic trauma that we are still trying to overcome. So I tell folks, don't be too hard on black folks. So we've only had 45 years, if you count the 1968 legislation as a jump off point for independence. I really don't. But if you want to start there, let's start there. Less than 45 years of really independence, of really being in a position where we can control our own destiny. So it's, and that light, even though it's very basic common sense, you invest in your own, you control your own economic system, you control your own educational system, you control your criminal justice system. Very basic. No other race allows any other race to determine what happens to their kids. But when you look at it from the light of the hundreds and hundreds of years of psychic conditioning, trauma, oppression, it's kind of understandable that we're still in this kind of colluded, confused, lost place as far as our economic and social and educational priorities.
Interesting. So basically, we're making more money.
We're making more money, but we have not made that next evolutionary leap to start investing in our own communities.
Gotcha.
And that's what I loved about your book, Boogeyman, that it throws out that hypothesis. What if we decided, 26, what if a group of us decided that we were going to reclaim a neighborhood? We were going to create our own school. We're going to create our own economic money-generating system. That's the jump-off point. And the sad thing about it is it's a jump-off point to something that happened years and years ago. They did this in Tulsa, Oklahoma with Black Wall Street. There have been these instances where black folks, by necessity, had to depend on one another, had to create their own economic base for survival. I get criticism for this, but I say, this whole integration movement was a huge distraction for us. It was a necessary distraction because we've been marching and preaching and talking and fighting to integrate, to get the same things everybody else had in society. But it was a huge distraction from where we were going. Because in the late 1960s, we had our own towns, we had our own businesses, we had our own educational system, our teachers, we had our own black curriculum based on the needs that our kids had. Dr. Not Carter G. Woodson, who was the one that did the technical school? Booker T. Washington. I love that debate between Booker T and W.D. Du Bois. W.D. Du Bois is saying we need to be intellectual and go to college and become the talented 10th. And Booker T was saying, no, you need to have some jobs, you need to own some land, you need to learn how to work the land, you need to grow your own food. And the sad part of it, as much as they went after each other, they were both right. And the same thing with Malcolm and Martin. As much as they went after each other, they both were right. So we keep falling into this paradigm of
There was only
destroying.
one way to do something.
Exactly. So if you want to look at a modern day example, Tavis Smiley and Barack Obama. You know, Tavis is saying we need a black agenda because our woes are much more deeper than the rest of America. And Obama's saying no, all a rising tide raises all boats. They're both right. So we should not have this, I hate you, I'm not going to speak to you kind of environment. But I digress. Until we go back and understand that we have no choice but to create systems within the systems, we're going to be lost. We're giving our kids over to an educational system that has not been created to serve our children. We're turning our kids over to an economic system that does not respect, understand their cultural values, even though they exploit them all. They don't respect it enough to invest in the people who create it. And then there's the criminal justice system, which is by design, which really came into strong existence after slavery. After slavery ended, the criminal justice system boomed because they would start arresting African Americans for anything. Walking down the street, being out after sunlight. And when they arrested them, they put them to work. So the slave master still had free labor. We're getting back to that point now because now we have 1.7 million folks in jail, where 1 million of them are African Americans. And now you have these major corporations going to these prisons, putting these black men and Hispanic men, majority, to work for pennies on the dollar, making jeans and making refrigerators, making all kinds of stuff. So what you really have is a de facto slave system being recreated.
Man. So, is there no hope? Is that like...
Again,
is
my
there
brother, that's what I like about your book. Your book, a little drastic, but that is the steps we need to take until we defiantly say what the Jewish Americans have said, until we defiantly say what the Arab Americans, not Arab Americans, Arabs have said, what Koreans say, what every other race say. I'm going to take care of mine. I'm going to start business and I'm going to bring in my cousin, my son, my neighbor. I'm going to shop with my friend, my brother, my sister. They're not anti-American for doing that. I'm going to invest in my community. I'm going to make sure that my children know about Islam. I'm going to make sure my children know about Judaism. I'm going to make sure that Judaism is inculcated in their education. I make sure that the rites of passage, the bar mitzvah, is inculcated in their education. I'm going to make sure my kids understand the importance of giving back to my community. I'm going to make sure my kids understand the importance of my unique space. African Americans have always been taught, drop all that black stuff. You have to assimilate. How many times you heard educators say, oh, he got out of the ghetto. I want you to meet Magic Johnson. He got out of the ghetto. Or such and such got out of the ghetto. And so our kids are like, what's wrong with the ghetto? What's wrong with my home? What's wrong with my neighborhood? We got to start saying, I want you to meet Tallis Piaget. He lives in your neighborhood. He has the business on the corner of Natural Bridge and Newstead. He refuses to move. He does business with the bank on the corner of Kings Highway and Natural Bridge. That's what we need to start doing. And we cannot do it in the system. So we have to create an alternative system. That's what the Sweet Potato Project is really all about, creating an alternative educational system, an alternative economic system, teaching these little geniuses, like my brother just said before he left, our kids know technology, man. They know that stuff. They got it. They're posting YouTube videos that they're making at home. Until we tap into these kids and make education applicable, that's the biggest problem with public education. It's not applicable to their world. They walk outside their doors and they don't know how George Washington fits in with Natural Bridge and Newstead. They have no idea how collective economics really applies to the payday lending store. This is the stuff they see. So what we do is we say, all right, why is there a payday lending store in your neighborhood but there's not one in Central West End? Well, because a lot of folks don't have bank accounts. So what do we need to do? We need to make sure that some people get bank accounts. You start connecting the dots and they get it. So I know it's a long answer to your very short question, but yeah, the answer is, man, until we grow up and realize what every other culture realizes, we've got to take care of our own. We can't keep giving our kids over to a system. One other statistic, every year, 300,000 kids, majority black and Hispanic, are introduced to the criminal justice system through school. Let me say that again.
Did you say that our schools are introducing our kids to the penal system.
You know why? Because in 1999, when the Columbine shooting, I think it was 1999, 1997, when the Columbine shooting, they instituted these zero tolerance policies across the country. That meant the moment you did something, you brought a knife to school, you brought a fingernail clipper to school, anything that the police are automatically called. The teachers don't have the luxury to calling your parents, have the luxury of giving you a stern warning. Like when you and I were kids,
Right.
we did something stupid. Principals talked to us, talked bad to us, and sent our bus home. We did it again, they called our parents. Now the kids go directly to the police. You can be reading these stories about 5-year-olds handcuffed and sent to jail.
Exactly.
And again, you look at the faces. Who are they? African Americans.
Exactly.
Sometimes Hispanic kids. So our kids are being introduced to the criminal justice system. And once you get into that system, man,
You're there forever.
and Jimmy Edwards said, a kid, Judge Jimmy Edwards, juvenile Judge Jimmy Edwards said, once the kid spends one night in a juvenile detention center, he's learned a year's worth of nefarious behavior. He learns about drugs. He learns about burglary. He learns about all that stuff. And now we are introducing our kids to the system through school. 300,000 kids per year in the last 10 years. How many kids has that been?
That's
300,000 times
10,
3 million. And this is what we're sitting back allowing to happen to our children. It's on us, man. We abandon these communities. We create an environment that they have to try to navigate. We get mad at the kids, well, pull your pants up and stop committing crimes. We created this mess by leaving it. We lost the middle class. We lost black-owned businesses in our community. When you and I were kids, we can go down to the barbershop, maybe get a weekend job, sweeping up some hair. We learned economics. We learned independence. We learned, okay, I gotta do this on my own. I need to get an education, but I also need to know how to take care of myself. Our kids are not being taught to take care of themselves. And they're not being taught to capitalize on their own community. You have, and again, this is not racist, it's reality. You have Asians, you have Arabs, you have Koreans. You used to have Jews, Germans, and Italians who ran the businesses in the African American community. Now you have Arabs and Koreans in the African American community because they recognize that there is value there. I don't know if they have economics 101 overseas, but they know that if they can get to America and get to a poor community, they're gonna make some money. So, but the bottom line is they understand that going back to the 1.2,
1.1 trillion.
1 trillion, they understand that is discretionary income. We're gonna spend that on the honey buns. We're gonna spend that on the sweet drinks. We're gonna spend that on the fatty foods. We're gonna spend that on anything that can be fried, chopped up, and dyed.
And you know what's funny? In all actuality, it isn't discretionary income, but we use it as discretionary income.
We don't know about it.
And I think we may hit why our net worth hasn't changed. Because we're using our discretion. No, we're using money that should go into higher priorities as discretionary.
I love what you did in your book when you talked about, and I don't want to divulge too much. Let me know if I.
Oh no, please tell everybody more about.
You threw out this. For you all to know, it's a group of black men who kind of want to reclaim their communities. You throw out this idea, and it's a crazy idea. You tell these guys, you got to commit half your income, and secondly, y'all got to move into the city. I can only imagine.
Oh, you just know that. You got your mind.
I ain't moving back in, but that basic premise right there is the key to survival, and it's smart, because like you said in the book, the land is cheap as hell in the city. You can get vacant property. So what if a group of average citizens who paid $500,000 for a house came into the city and they decided to take one block and they can get the same kind of house for $20,000 or $50,000?
Right.
You don't need your income. You're no longer paying a $5,000 house note. You paying you paying a $200 house note. So imagine what you can do if you invest that money. So it's not brain science. That's why I really I'm here, because I really appreciate the bold visionary thought that you're putting out there. But until we start thinking like that, until we start trying to think of viable, realistic ways to reclaim these communities, reclaim these blocks, generate income, start being innovative, creating our own products, sharing the wealth amongst each other, depending on each other, buying supplies from each other, until we realize, and you had a beautiful line, I can't remember it, something about if one of us the stars and the rest of the such. It was a beautiful line. I just can't remember that beautiful line. But it was a line that basically what it said was, if we're all not succeeding, then none of us are succeeding. You know?
Right.
So this isn't brain science.
No, it's not.
It's brainwashing.
And with that, I'm going to say thank you so much, Brother Sylvester. It's been a true pleasure.
Always.
Highly illuminating. I can't express how much I thank you and appreciate your time. I know you're a very busy man. I like to say I had a wonderful time mentoring in your program, the Sweet Potato Project. We had, 25 kids that did really well, grew potatoes, processed them, harvested.
And we're not done. I hope you're not done. I mean, I really came to depend on you, man.
Absolutely not. So we are ending this segment of the Black News Hour. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in, and please tune in again next week. And I would like to leave you all with one adage, and that's be like water, my friends. Be like water. Good night, everyone.